Well, good
Oh,
evening, everyone, and welcome. This is our second Celebrate Diversity event. Last couple weeks ago, we had a panel of essential workers, and this evening we have a climate activist with us. We have two climate activists with us, a local one, um, that's Django Grace, and we have an international Ugandan um, climate activist, Vanessa Nakate, with us. And we're really excited to have them. And as our opening, and I should say who I am. I'm Michaela Sims, and I'm Diversity Equity Coordinator for Wyndham Southeast Supervisory District. And welcome. Um, Trinity, go ahead and read your poem. Welcome, Trinity.
hi, Trinity. I'll be reading a poem about our connection to nature. It is by Arna Bontemps, and it is titled "A Black Man Talks of Reaping." I have sown beside all waters in my day. I planted deep within my heart the fear that wind or foul would take the grain away. I planted safe against these stark lean near. I scattered seed enough to plant the land and rose from Canada to Mexico. But for this, my reaping only what the hand can hold at once is all I can show. Yet I I messed up. Yet what I sowed and what the orchards yield, my brother's sons are gathering stock in root. Small wonder then my child glean in fields. They have not sown and feed on bitter fruit.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Michaela. Our first speaker is Django Grace. He's a 14-year-old climate activist who was born and raised in the northeast of the U.S., specifically Brattleboro, Vermont. He has been active around issues of climate justice in his hometown, and he likes to ski downhill.
Hi, everybody. It's pronounced Django, by the way. It's cool. Um, I guess I'm here to just provide a little bit of context for what's happening here in Brattleboro around the climate movement and as far as activism. I think I've seen some of you guys on the streets. Um, yeah, I'll share my story and kind of what is happening here as far as organizations and protests and things. So I started thinking about climate change. I think I was in like second or third grade. It wasn't like a very clear cut picture I got. My mom explained to me about like the basics of what she knew, and that mostly about the ozone layer, which actually is not the biggest problem we have right now. But basically, to the best of my like 8-year-old understanding, that was that the world is ending slowly, and none of my peers or adults or people that I look up to or leaders are doing anything about it. So this like kind of shook me. I mean, like I, like it made me really sad to know that. And look around in my community and see like my friends in my class that didn't know about this. So I mean, I started like educating myself a little bit, but mostly it just scared me, and I didn't really have the courage to do anything. Every now and then I would go online and like look up facts about it, and I still have these drawings from when I was like in third grade of like me designing solar powered cars with like solar magnifiers and all these things that were going to suck uh, pollution out of the cars. So as I kind of got older, like I kind of like moved away from like trying to invent things. Um, and just as I kind of like, I came into middle school, and then my mom shows me a speech by Greta Thunberg, and she was talking on NPR with Amy Goodman. And I was like, someone out there is doing something. Like, it was so good to know that finally someone out there was like, who was a youth my age, someone I could look up to, was striking and doing these things. So Greta Thunberg starts the Fridays for Future, and there was a protest in my town that some youth at the high school organized, and I was like, I'm gonna give this a shot. So me and my family and some of my friends, like, we went down there and to the protest, and it was amazing. Um, uh, so I kind of got into this protesting thing, and then I kind of got into like the activist loop in Brattleboro, I guess, if that's a thing. Um, there was more protests that I attended. There was it kind of like built momentum. I met Abby at 350. And there's kind of like got in touch with all the different organizations around here. Yeah, and then there was a last summer it really picked up for me. There was a die-in at the Strolling of the Heifers. I don't know if anybody knows what that is. Where so the Strolling of the Heifers is a big parade that happens in Brattleboro, and a group of me and some other youth went out into the street and we laid down and stopped the parade with a sign that said, I forget what it said. It was like something about climate change, and it was kind of bringing awareness to it. Um, yeah, and so since then I've done a lot more protests, mostly just like on the street. Of course, now it's kind of hard too because we're in the COVID time. But yes, as far as so things in Brattleboro, I think there's a pretty like the main thing that I know about is 350 Brattleboro is a organization. It's a chapter of 350 .org, which is a huge organization all around the U.S. and the world, I think. And there's a chapter of that in Brattleboro, and they are focusing on a lot of local things. There's a Northeastern Extinction Rebellion chapter, I believe, or maybe is it Southern Vermont, or I don't know. The Extinction Rebellion is pretty active here, so I've worked with them too. And then there's also the Brattleboro Select Board, which I don't know if anybody appreciates how awesome having a municipal like government in Brattleboro is, but it is amazing because like it allows like me as a youth to be able to like work with the people who basically run my town to like form it into a place that I want to see. So you can go to the select board and work with them. There's been some petitions and stuff that have been passed, and there's a sustainability coordinator that was a pretty big success we have in Brattleboro. The select board decided to appoint a person to help move around funds to make Brattleboro more sustainable. Yeah, there's Fridays for Future happens every Friday. Well, I mean in normal times downtown. There's kids strike from school and go down there. I don't actually regularly do that. And then yeah, whenever Greta Thunberg says there's a big national protest, we're out there. So you can see us on the streets. Yeah, that's all I have.
Thank you, Django. My name is Natalia Dorsley. I am a student at SHS, which is a high school in Springfield, Vermont, and I have the pleasure of introducing Vanessa Nakate. She's a climate activist from Uganda, and she was the first Fridays for Future climate activist in Uganda and founder of the Rise Up Climate movement in order to amplify the voices of activists from Africa. Her work includes raising awareness to the danger of climate change, the causes, and the impacts. She heads the campaign Save Congo Rainforest, which is facing massive deforestation. This campaign later spread to other countries from Africa to Europe. She is currently working on a project that involves installation of solar and institutional stoves in schools.
Hi.
Hi, karibu sana.
Haribu, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And I thank you for inviting me to speak at this Zoom webinar. I really appreciate it. My name is Vanessa Nakate, and I am a climate activist from Uganda. I started climate activism in the first week of January 2019. I haven't been doing it for a very long time. I think it has gone for maybe 1.5 years now. So becoming a climate activist was a process for me. It is not something that my parents told me about or something that I learned from someone else. I really didn't know much about climate change. As I grew up, I didn't understand the connection that we had with nature. I didn't know much about the environment because I come from a community and from a country whereby the focus is so much on education and just the theoretical education, whereby you have to learn about history, geography, and all that stuff, but you never get to know the realities of the world and what is really happening in the world. So I remember in 2017, my dad joined some group. It's called Rotary, and I used to see them take part in some activities where they help out people and offer free services to people. Some of them would be medical, some of them would be food, and sometimes it would just be clothing, helping out people in any way possible. So I guess that caught up with me in the year 2018. I felt like I wanted to do the exact thing. I wanted to do something that could help people in my community and hopefully in my country. So I started to carry out research to understand the problems that the people face. And of course, I found quite a number of problems like poverty, corruption, gender inequalities, among others. But I was really surprised to find that climate change was one of those problems. Why? This is because in school, it is taught as something that either happened in the past or something that either is coming in the future. As I said, our education is so much of theoretical. It can only be practical if you choose to do sciences, and I'm not someone for sciences. They were so complicated for me, so I went in for arts instead. And yeah, so it was kind of hard for me to connect all that, the science of climate change and the environment. But when I saw that climate change was the biggest threat to the people in my country, I decided to read more about it. It was more like a self-study to understand its causes and also the impacts in people's lives. And the truth is, when I found out some of these impacts, I realized that I had seen some people complain and cry out on television because of those very disasters. For example, the people in the Mount Elgon area, there are places like Bundibujo and Bududa in Uganda, and these people have experienced torrential rainfall. Now that is from the news that I'd seen in the past. So I was trying to connect the impacts that I had read about and what had actually happened. And I got to realize that these people had already experienced climate change and its disasters. And I would see them cry out to the government for help, because when climate change really strikes, it doesn't just bring about one problem, maybe the flooding. It goes on to affect people's livelihoods in the end. The thing is, many people just stop at knowing the statistics of how many people were swept by a flood or how many people lost their homes, but they never really get to understand what really happens when a community or when a family faces a climate disaster. So when I realized that these problems were already here in my country and people were already suffering, I decided that I had to do something about it. And I remember reading about ways of creating awareness. And, they say sometimes Google knows everything. So I went to ask about ways of creating awareness for a problem. And they brought quite a number of movements that I read about. That's how I also got to know about the Fridays for Future movement that was started by Greta. I read about it and I thought that that's something that I could do, because at that time I was just a student, no resources, known that I was going to help out these communities because I didn't have the money to, or even the resources to. But I thought that if I did the climate strikes, maybe they would get awareness and they would get the help from the government. And I decided that I would also join the climate strikes. But I found out about the climate strikes in 2018, but the reason for starting them in 2019 was because it was a very, very complicated thing for me to do. Growing up, I was not so confident, and I was kind of a very, very shy person. Actually, even speaking now, I feel like all eyes are on me and it's crazy. But so growing up, I was really a very shy person and very reserved, and I just loved to be by myself all the time as a child. And I also remember in schools, I really had, in primary school, in high school, I had very, very few friends. I would say like 3 or 2. So I was so skeptical about going to the streets because it was a scary thing for me to do. But I remember in that first week of January 2019, it just hit me, and I think it just came to me, and I'm like, I've been wasting a lot of time, and I just have to do this, whether it's scary, whether I'm shy, I just have to go for it and see how it works out. And then I remember doing the signs with my siblings. They came in and helped make some of the signs. And Friday had already passed, so the first strike was on Sunday actually, because I was feeling like, oh my God, I've wasted so much time. Oh my God, I would have already started with this, and a lot of time has gone. But then Friday had passed, so I told my siblings we are going to do this on Sunday. Sorry. So my very first strike was actually on a Sunday. I remember making the signs with my siblings in the night, and our parents were looking at us like, "What is really happening?" And the next day, I think the next day we actually didn't go to church that day. We just went for the strike early in the morning, like at 7 a.m. And I remember we went to 4 locations. We striked in 4 places. By the time we got back home, we were so tired, so hungry, because no one had made breakfast at 7 a.m. So we just went, and we were standing on the streets with our placards, and people were looking at us like we had literally lost our minds. And of course, I really understand them, because even me, who has been in school, I didn't know that climate change was really a challenge, and I didn't give much care about it. But when I read about it, I realized it was a challenge, but not everyone has even got an opportunity to go to school in my country. So how can they even know about a problem that, they haven't learned about, or they haven't even read about, or something that no one has told them about? So they were looking at us with all these weird faces and all that. But we just kept going. We did like 30 minutes for the first location. Then we went to the second location. We did 30 minutes. Then we walked to the third. We were literally walking. So it spent like 4 hours, and then we went back home. Yeah. The good thing, I had carried some money for transport back home, but going, we were just walking with the placards. Yeah. So after that, I remember my dad asking, like, what were you guys doing? And they're like, we were striking. And the truth is that was a new thing to people. Like, climate strikes, like, they really didn't know the existence of something like that. So he didn't really give much attention, and even mom didn't give much attention. So after that, my siblings had to go back to school, because for them, they are in boarding school, and I had to continue with the strikes by myself, because the thing is, if you've started, there is really no way of stopping. You have to keep the momentum going, because you have to make sure that you achieve what you really are looking for, and you make sure you get the demands that you're demanding from your government. So I continued with the strikes by myself for quite some time. Of course, it wasn't easy, but I kept on doing it until I got so used to it. And to be honest with you, I really didn't know that the strike would ever reach the international people. I didn't even know that anyone would ever know about my existence, because in the first place, it was about my community and my country, and that is why I was doing the strikes. So basically, to me, I just saw myself as a local activist, I would say, just trying to create some awareness and see if things really work out. And yeah, so it went on like that for quite a long time, and this is where I am right now. And when I'm to talk about the challenges that climate change brings about in my country, Uganda as a country heavily depends on agriculture as as a form of survival for many people, actually even for the economy as well. It contributes so much to the GDP of the country. So you find that many communities, especially those in the rural areas, they depend on agriculture, they depend on the crops that they grow, and climate change has not been so friendly with them, because it has brought about so much change with the weather patterns. The weather distribution is so uneven right now. The rainfall is so uneven right now. I remember talking to a farmer who told me that in the past 20 years, the month of January was really loved by farmers because of how it would bring the rainfall, and farmers were able to know how much rainfall would come. But now it's the difference. I'm sure when you're to come to Uganda in the month of January, you would realize that it is actually the hottest month right now in the country. And of course, people are not so keen to see some of those changes, including me. I wasn't so keen to see those changes until I decided to read about them and also learn from the people who are much older than me, because at the end of the day, we need even the older generation in the fight against the climate crisis. We can't do it by ourselves, because they know some of the things, they know some of the facts that we don't know. You find that some of the old generation has indigenous people, and they have been able to protect some of the ecosystems of the world for a very long time, for over 100 years, some of them over 200 years, 500 years. So they really have the knowledge. That is why we as activists should not just focus on what we can do as young people, but we should include the older generation, because at the end of the day, we need the wisdom of those who are here before us, who have been fighting for the planet, who have been fighting for the environment. We need their wisdom to help us move forward, to help us in the decisions and in the demands that we are making. And yeah, we just need that intergenerational kind of activism that involves everyone. And yeah, what else can I talk about? Right now in the COVID-19 situation, of course, a lot has really changed when it comes to activism, and it has really cut across, like literally the entire world has been shut down, and people are locked down, and people are just staying at home. Of course, the activism has been affected in a way, because we can no longer go out to the streets to do the activism. Now we just do it online. And of course, I'll speak from the perspective of my country. Sometimes it is hard to get students to walk out of school to do the climate strikes. As I said, education is so upheld in my country, and it's more like everyone's life depends on it. It's more like if you don't study, you won't make it in life. That is the mindset that is in almost every child. So it is hard to tell someone to walk out of school, because they would be subjected to suspension or even to expulsion in some schools. So what we've been doing as activists who are able to do the activism is going within those schools and talking to the principals, and them giving us time to talk to the students and be able to teach them about climate change, because we cannot have climate activists coming up if people don't even know that climate change is here. So I personally believe in climate education and reaching out to the people who don't know and teaching them about what is really happening, because someone can only try to run out of a burning house if they know that the house is on fire. Because if they don't know that it's on fire, they will stay comfortable. It's more like how you're seated in your house right now, and then I come and tell you there is a lion coming for you, it's in your house. And if you don't know that, and if you don't believe that, you will stay seated. So it is the same thing. Many people don't know. So in my activism, I've tried as much as possible to reach out to people, those in schools, primary schools especially, to talk to the students and the teachers, and be able to teach them and be able to let them know how they can do what they can do to protect the environment, and how their voices are important in the fight against the climate crisis. Because at the end of the day, this planet is ours, this earth is our home, and it's our responsibility, and everyone is needed in this fight. But now when it comes to this pandemic, a lot has changed, because we cannot reach out to these people anymore. We cannot go to schools because right now schools are closed, universities are closed, and any kind of gatherings are closed. Public transportation, private, everything has literally been closed. People can just walk, but nothing much is really going on. So some of the activities have been affected, and you find that not every student has access to a phone. So that has been a challenge for us in the country. Not every
So how's it going?
Pardon?
You didn't blow me off. Don't.
You,
Go ahead, Vanessa.
Okay. Yeah, so as the saying that not every student has access to a phone, not every person has access to the internet, and also the connection is not so good for some people. So we've had few people joining in on the digital activism, but at the end of the day, the important thing is that those who have access to these things are still able to push the message, because we as activists have to even speak out louder. We know very well that this pandemic has literally shadowed the climate crisis, and no one wants to hear much about climate change. I have personally noticed that some people even send you messages and they're like, why don't you talk about the coronavirus? Why are you just talking about climate change? But coronavirus being here doesn't mean that climate change has gone to rest, climate change has gone on vacation, because it is not the case when it comes to some of the communities in Africa. We've seen Lake Victoria, the water levels are really rising up, and many people are being displaced. Imagine being displaced in this pandemic. So you're literally facing two problems at the same time. I read that 32,000 people were displaced in Kenya, and 194 people died because of the floods. The lake water levels are really rising up, and it's the same thing happening in Uganda. People are being displaced, people are being swept away by the floods. People have lost their homes and their property, and many of them have lost their farms. As I said, many people heavily depend on agriculture for survival. So literally people are being pushed to a point of literally suffering, because now many of them can't be able to have good shelter, many of them can't be able to have good food, and then many of them, they are being subjected to quite a number of diseases, because when the water levels of the lake rise up, you find that the toilets are being submerged, and it's just so unhealthy a situation right now for people to face two big problems at the same time. So we as activists, we need to speak out loudest right now, because the world seems like it has forgotten about climate change and its existence, and we're the ones to keep on reminding them that climate change is here, climate change is affecting people's lives. And then you also know very well that economies are going down right now, economies are going into recess right now. So what will happen after this pandemic? Governments are going to try as much as possible to build up their economies at whatever cost. They're going to try and make quick profits at whatever cost. We are going to see oil and gas companies being bailed out. We are going to see very many industries running. So governments are going to take us to a point that is even worse than where we were, because right now it seems like earth is rejuvenating, but this is not something that we can be happy about if it involves the loss of people's lives. We cannot acquire a healthy planet while sacrificing people's lives. So we as activists need to keep pushing, we need to keep speaking in this time and even after, so that our governments are able to push for a green recovery. A lot of vulnerability has been exposed in this pandemic for many countries, for many governments. We've seen that some governments don't have enough health facilities. Some people can't even access good health facilities. So we've seen so many challenges. When people have to stay in lockdown, not everyone has access to food. Some people have not been taught to save up money for such emergencies. Actually, some people don't even have the jobs to save money for such emergencies. The money that they make is what they feed on daily. And in such a pandemic, people have been pushed to really a very, very hard period. So we as activists need to push for a greener recovery for our world, for our planet, so that we can be more inclusive in making sure that people have access to a clean and healthy environment, because it rightfully belongs to them. People have access to basic needs like health facilities, shelter, food, among others. And then also, this pandemic has also taught us so much, and I hope it has taught our leaders very many things, because to me, I see that it has shown that if you take long to address a crisis, it escalates so fast and claims very many people's lives. If you don't listen to the science and be able to take the precautions and the guidelines that are being given, many people's lives are put at risk. And also, this pandemic has showed us that the leaders are actually capable. They have the resources, they have the money, they have the power to take any kind of collective action. But the only thing is that they don't have the will. With the coronavirus, of course, they have the will to stop the spread, because this virus is affecting their economies directly. It's affecting even the people in the high class societies. It is really not leaving out anyone. And now when it comes to the climate change crisis, it is currently affecting the least privileged, the marginalized people, the people who literally have no voice when it comes to certain things, the people who have been silenced for a very long time. So you find that does not interest government leaders, because they feel like that is not affecting their profit or their economies. So we need to push our leaders to listen to what the science says, because if we listen to the science, we are able to save many people's lives and be able to stop a crisis from escalating and becoming worse. Right now, climate change is at a point whereby it is not affecting everyone, but a time is going to come when it's going to affect everyone, regardless of who they are, regardless of their position in society. Same thing with what happened with this pandemic. When it started, I think I first heard about it in January. Everyone was so comfortable because they thought that they were safe. So that is the same thing with the climate change crisis. Many people think that they are safe because they haven't faced the direct impact. But when we don't address a crisis at the earliest stage, it escalates and many people end up losing their lives. And these are things that we have to speak against as activists, to be able to push for change and to be able to push for systems that are able to accommodate and encourage and push for the protection of people's lives and also for the protection of the planet. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vanessa. I just have a few follow-up questions, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
What kinds of things should we be reading or listening to so that we can learn more about climate change? Yeah, I guess I'll ask the other questions after if you want to answer.
Yeah, I've had you. Thank you. Now, what we should be reading, there's so many reports that are being released this time and then, but I really push you to read more of the IPCC reports, because they clearly explain the science of climate change. They have the exact facts of the science of climate change. They clearly explain how different regions of the world will be affected by the climate crisis. They clearly give the facts of what will happen if we don't address the climate issue. So I really encourage you to read more of the IPCC reports, because when you actually read them from what was first written and what is current, you realize that it becomes even worse as the years go by. So you realize the urgency and the emergency of this crisis that we are in. So those are really good readouts that you can go to. And also I would encourage you to read articles from the Guardian. The Guardian usually has articles that talk about the climate crisis, that talk about the fossil fuel industry, and I must say that they are very authentic readouts for anyone who would like to know more about the climate crisis and understand the facts that come with it.
What are some of your plans for activating other people?
Some of the plans, of course, is to continue. One of them is to continue teaching the students in a primary school and helping them understand what climate change really is. Because me becoming an activist was after me learning and knowing what climate change really is. So the only way that we can have more people joining on the climate activism is by teaching them, because when they know that their future is at stake and that their lives are in danger, they will be moved to fight for the planet. And then the other thing that I do and that I continuously hope to do, we usually reach out to local communities, because some of these people, they don't have the opportunity to go to school. So we reach out to these local communities and do some activities like cleanups. So we go with the brooms and sacks, we sweep their communities and also collect the rubbish and the garbage. And after that, we ask them, like we ask to talk to them, because you know how people are. Once you offer them help, they are willing to listen to you. So that is one of the strategies that we use. We help them out by cleaning their communities, and then they give us an opportunity to talk to them and tell them about what is happening. And then the other thing is using the platforms that you have, that is social media, to talk about climate change and to be able to push that climate knowledge to people, because very many people don't know. But if we make sure that many people know about the crisis, we'll be able to have more people fighting for the planet. And if we are all united and work collectively towards the same goal, I believe that we are able to drive change.
Thank you. And the last question, I know you spoke a little bit about like
we lost you. We can't hear you. You're muted. You're both muted.
Was I muted?
Okay, yeah, you were. Go ahead.
Okay. So I know you spoke a little bit about like strategies that we can use to help raise awareness, but what kinds of things should young people here in the US be doing to help raise awareness or help fight for change?
Well, yeah, I think that really depends on the environment and the system in the US, and how it maybe how it's similar to the system in my country, Uganda. But what I can say is literally what I've already said. The young people in the US, I'm in touch with some of them. So what they can do and what I've seen others do is they use their social media a lot. Even when they do their strikes by themselves, they post their work on social media, and that is really powerful, because you find that many people share the work that they are doing. And even those climate strikes, they are a form of awareness. So young people can join the climate strikes in order to create awareness, because by the time you start striking, that is already a way of creating awareness. It is one thing to talk about a problem, but then it's another thing for you to step out and actually do something about it, because we can't just stop at speaking and speaking about climate change, and yet we don't step out there to actually show that we really want these changes. We really want our demands fulfilled by the leaders. And maybe the other thing, I really don't know how the communities are in the US, so I really don't understand the easiest way that you can reach out to people, if if it's easier to maybe reach out to people through cleanups or through plastic picking. I don't know if it's the same with you like it is in my country, Uganda, but that would be another way that you can reach out to people, because not everyone has access to social media, especially the older generation. They are not so focused on social media like we, the younger people. So the best way that you can reach out to them is doing it in person, you know. And for us, how we do it is by doing those activities where we clean their communities for them. So when it comes to the US, I really don't know how their communities are organized, but if there is a way that you can reach out, maybe pick plastic so that they ask you why you are picking that plastic, that gives you an opportunity to explain what is really happening and the challenge that the planet faces. And then the other thing is speaking out when someone does something that, you know, that is not good for the planet or for the environment at large. For example, in your schools, if you see someone maybe use plastic or someone throw plastic in the compound, you can do something at that point. Either pick up the plastic and give it back to them and tell them that this is not right, you have to deposit it in the right way. Or if you can give them other alternatives. There are always alternatives to using plastic. For example, you can use bottles instead of just buying bottled water all the time, because that is so much plastic to put in use. So you can talk to your friends, you know, reach out to your friends and tell them that it's better to have a bottle instead of and carry your own water instead of having to buy water for plastic bottles every time that you need something to drink. And then also you can reach out to your teachers. I believe that there are those sessions whereby students have moments with teachers talking about their work and their studies. So you can use those moments to pitch in and, you know, just ask your teacher, so what do you think climate change is, and do you really believe in climate change? Now when you start the conversation, that is when that is what will give you an opportunity to speak out more and get your teacher involved in what you're doing and the activism that you're doing. And then also the other way that you can reach out in your worship areas. Some people go to church, some people go to mosques, whatever worship regions that you have. It's easier to actually relate with the people that you pray with sometimes. So those are the other people that you can reach out to, and they're able to believe you, since you all have the same beliefs and you all have the same probably traditions. So you can reach out to them in their worship centers, in your worship centers, and talk to them and explain what the dangers are and what is really happening to the planet. And then the other thing is being exemplary as a young activist. That is, if you tell your friend, for example, to carry a water bottle and just move with it, you should be doing that already, because they'll be ready to challenge you if they see you buying water from for a plastic bottle. So you should be exemplary. Maybe instead of having to pack your maybe something you've bought in plastic bags, you can carry your own bag. You move with your own bag to show them that we can still buy things without having to get the plastic packaging. And then the other thing, this is kind of it could be so tough to do, but it's just stopping to purchase certain things from places that maybe encourage the destruction of the planet, or businesses that are not sustainable enough, or shops that are not sustainable enough. You literally tell them that I'm not going to buy this from you if you do not change something about this. And of course, we know how businesses love to make profit. So at the end of the day, if many people push for that and ask them for that, they'll move to a point of bringing the change and causing sustainability in their businesses, because they want you to buy from them. And also you can use this in your school canteens. I don't know if you also have school canteens like this side. So you can use that in the school canteens and just decide to do a certain form of peaceful protest and maybe organize your classmates, and you just tell maybe the canteen lady or the canteen gentleman that, you know what, today we are not buying from you. This is because your business is not sustainable enough, your canteen is not really good for our planet. So they will be moved to ask you what they can do so that they can make the planet a better place, and so that they can have you buy more of their stuff, because at the end of the day they really want the profit and they want to make the sales. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Are there any other questions that people have for Vanessa while we have her? Thank you so much for joining us. Oh, Janaki has a question. Go ahead, Janaki.
Vanessa, it's wonderful to see you, and I feel very homesick.
Oh,
For,
thank you so much.
for East Africa, I was in Dar es Salaam for about 10 years at the University of Dar es Salaam.
Wow.
So my mind goes back there. But have you found that people have joined you in fair numbers? And also, have any older groups also supported you and joined you?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And yes, I've had some people join me, and I'm doing activism. I'm no longer doing activism by myself. I have other activists that I work with in my country, and right now we've been doing so many digital actions through videos, through photos, and I've been sharing that on my social media. And then for the older generation, it has not really been so helpful, because most of them are so focused on providing for their families. As I said, many people don't even know that climate change is a problem. They think that it's just a certain kind of myth, so they don't really believe in it. So you find that many people are so focused on providing for their families, and they don't realize that, yes, you as a parent, you may try and secure my future with money, but at the end of the day, climate change is going to say no, and your money won't help at that point when the planet is gone, or when the planet is completely in a disastrous form. And I must say, some maybe came in a bit, but they really didn't come in for the activism. They just really wanted maybe interviews or to attend some of their events after what happened in Davos. So there's really been no much help when it comes to the older generation.
Thank you.
Thank you too for that question.
Oh, Ellen, go ahead. Yeah, Ellen, you can hear me? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Vanessa. That was just so inspiring. And thank you for making the time to talk to us here in Vermont. I'm really impressed with you in general, but I'm impressed especially with as young people or as older people, sometimes it's easier to stay in ignorance about the climate because it's more comfortable not to know. And even though we kind of know, it's a little more, it's hard to really look at the facts and learn what's really going on. And I think a lot of us feel more comfortable with our blinders on. And I'm wondering how you find the courage to go to that place of knowledge and then taking it to action. And where do you find your strength and to make that? Where did you find your strength to make that step initially? And how do you keep it going without just getting overwhelmed?
Well, yes, thank you for that question. Of course, as I said, activism comes with some sort of struggles, but where I really get my strength is in the fact that as a person, I grew up with dreams and hopes that I really wanted to see in the future and things that I really wanted to achieve in the future. And when I think about the danger that the future faces and the danger that our planet faces, I think that's a form of motivation, in that I really want to change and make sure that the future is secure enough for me and for the rest of the people who are walking into it. And then I also believe in the fact that we cannot make our current demands compromise the demands of the future generations. So we can't destroy the planet as if we were the last generation that were going to inherit it, because I believe more people are coming in more years. Many people are coming, and we don't want to compromise the demands that they will have for the resources. So I think that is also a form of motivation, wanting to make sure that the future generation also has access to some of the resources that I've been able to access. And also the fact that I want to make sure that the future is not uncertain anymore and that it is really secure. And then the other form of motivation really comes from the rest of the activists. It is so motivating seeing so many young people doing really a lot of incredible work, demanding for action from their various countries. It is just so powerful to think that so many young voices have the same vision, they have the same thing that they want to achieve. So that's also a form of motivation for me, in that if there are days when I feel like I can't do this, I know that maybe one of you is doing this. So it's really motivating to know that I am not alone as an activist. If I decide to have a rest today, I'm sure that someone else, maybe Grace, is doing something somewhere. So it's really very, very motivating.
Thank you.
Any other questions? We know it's late at night, so we don't want to keep you, but if we might have time for one or two more if people have questions. Oh, Django, go ahead.
Oh, hi. Yeah. So is it true that you were on a panel with Greta Thunberg and you got cropped out of the picture?
Yeah, it's true.
First of all, I just want to say that that's wrong. And I was wondering like how that made you feel and what the story was behind that.
Yeah, that's what happened in Davos, and of course it made me feel very emotional, to be truthful, because it was so heartbreaking to think that we as young people in my continent or in my country, we are doing so much. We are trying to tell what is happening in the lives of the people in our communities. It's really already hard to get the message out there in our own communities, because the local media literally doesn't want to know. They really don't pay much attention to the climate crisis and also to the climate activists and also scientists. We've been looking out for scientists in our countries to really come out and speak out about these things. So when I thought about all these things, that how hard it is to do the activism back at home, and then also how hard it is to get your voice out there and push what you're saying out there on the international stage, because at the end of the day, the country where I come from or the continent, these people are the least emitters of carbons. So the countries that are responsible for the greatest emissions, they are the ones in the western part of the world. And I personally got an opportunity to speak at that press conference, and of course it was already disturbing to see that I was the only person from my continent. It was already disturbing to see that the rest of the people were all from Europe and I was from Africa. But I thought that maybe this would help give a voice to what the different activists are doing in Africa. So I actually remember telling the media that they are so biased about how they report when it comes to the climate crisis, and that they need to change that, because this is not just a piece of cake to report about the climate news for them to make money. They need to be more inclusive, because there are people who are out there who are really suffering. So what really hurt me the most was the fact that I had actually told media not to be so biased and to be inclusive perceive, and it actually did the opposite. So it was really heartbreaking to think that already as the only person there from my continent, and also the fact that I had spoken to media to change a bit, and the fact that when they introduced the activists who were at the press conference, I wasn't introduced. It wasn't just about the picture. Even in the introduction, I wasn't introduced as part of the press conference, and not even any of my words that I said were included. So it was a very, very heartbreaking moment for me, because I honestly felt like I had wasted my time at the press conference, and I felt like I really didn't add much when it comes to the climate movement. And I also felt like the people in my continent didn't have much value, and that the world doesn't really care much. And it also made me realize that taking climate action may take long, because the people who are responsible for the climate crisis are so comfortable, and they are representing the climate movement in a way that raises the voices of the most affected communities. So it was a really trying moment for me, but I just thank God that at the end of the day, there was so much support, and I came out stronger in the end.
So we might have time for one more question. So Vanessa could go to sleep. There's a lot of thanks in the chat. I don't know if you can see that, Vanessa. And thanks to Django. Any last questions? Vanessa, I just want to thank you, because this has been a long time communicating to make this happen, and you're so amazing. And I think that, you know, we're not as connected as we should be from continent to continent, and the continent of Africa is so important for us to learn about, and specifically each country on the continent, because so many of us don't know that Africa is not a country. So thank you for bringing Uganda to the forefront here today, and for sharing with us. And I hope this is not the last time. I hope this is just the first time of many times that we'll connect and talk about activism and youth activism, and that goes for all the youth here today. I don't know if anyone has any final comments for Vanessa before she goes, but I just want to thank you. You're much appreciated.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Be well, Vanessa, be well.
Thank you for everyone who joined us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And
please keep safe.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
Much love.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone. Thank you for joining us. On May 29th, we'll have Rebel Diaz.